All right. Hello, everyone. So this is episode 4 of the Man Cave, and we're very excited to have this time together. We've seen so much response from like so many different places, like all over the world, and it's been really incredible. So we really want to keep this up going, and so for this episode, as you guys can see, Pastor Sky isn't joining us. But this is kind of what we intended this to be, right? We wanted those in their 20s to meet together separately, and those in their 30s to meet separately, in the 40s and 50s, and so on and so forth. And I'm hoping that really from that endeavor, we get to really look clearly and carefully and precisely into like the psychology of the various different groups of people that we meet with, and we're able to gain a lot from that insight too. So today we have two people. We already met Mason, but I think just for the sake of everyone who's new and who is like following along with this journey, let's each do a self introduction. So actually, yeah, why doesn't the newest space start us off and introduce themselves, where you're from, how old you are, etc., whatever else you want to say.
Uh, all right. What's up, you? I mean, Eddie and Mason, y'all know me, but for everyone else that doesn't know, my name is Martin. I was born and raised in Ventura, the VTA, the 805. I attend the LA church. And if you listen online at if you listen online or you're in person at the church, listen to the live praise, then you will know me as the person playing the drums. I mean, yeah, I'll try to go to Hawaii and I'll play drums there. I mean, we'll see. But right now I'm 27, been in Providence since I was 10 years old. It's a simple story, really. My older brother just said, "Hey, you want to learn Bible lessons?" Like, yeah, sure. And that was it. And I guess a little bit about me, I like to rock climb, go work out, play soccer, go surfing, and soon to be doctor in physical therapy. So if you got injuries, I got you.
Yes,
That's
thank you.
it.
Thank you for that very California introduction. Yeah, so he mentioned a lot of things I think many people might not know, but yes, so he's from California, around LA, because we actually have a very international audience. So it's kind of good to be
Okay.
explaining a little further. But anyways, thank you, Martin, for that introduction, and let's proceed to Mr. Mason.
Hey everyone, I'm Mason. I'm also from the LA church. What's up, Martin? Yeah, I've been in the LA church since 2016. I was evangelized when I was 20 and I'm 28 now. Let's see. I also like to work out. Everyone that knows me knows that I work out. I do lots of push-ups, a lot of push-ups. Um, Let's see, something about myself. I'm currently training to beat a push-up world record. I'm soon to be moving to Georgia in a couple of months, so that's going to be interesting. And aside from that, let's see. I don't do it as much as I used to when I was younger, but I really, really like rap and hip hop. And I've made my own songs. I've recorded some here and there. Um, when I was younger in high school, I even got to record in a professional studio with people that also did work with other groups like Bone Thugs and Harmony. If you guys know who that is, it's a hip hop group. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Thank you for that, Mason. So yeah, it's interesting because for the first time we have everyone who's like from California for the most part, right? As Mason and Martin both mentioned, they're from LA, from San Francisco. But we'll try to give as representative of a viewpoint of guys as we can, even though like we're all from the same place. So at times we can try to expand beyond just what we think about ourselves and try to incorporate that into. But anyways, like I think these guys kind of brought up a lot of things that I think are quite interesting and that we can actually delve into. Both of them mentioned some of the things that they're interested in. And actually, when I was preparing for the segment right before together with Past This Guy, I guess a question kind of popped into my head about what we can go into. And I'm hoping that people who haven't really thought about this can gain a lot from it. And also for they themselves that this applies to, that we can think carefully, even introspectively about ourselves as well. Right. So the question that like kind of came to mind is like, for guys, what really motivates us? Right. And I think there's like different ways to interpret that question, but like even you guys mentioned a couple of things. Like Mason brought up something just now, right? And so something you guys don't know, he kind of he was very humble about this. He didn't say it in any sort of extravagant way, but he wants to break the push-up world record, right? So I've seen him in person do like hundreds of push-ups, like at the drop of a hat, like in the attempt to train for this. So it's already been super impressive. He just said very simple, he likes to work out, but I don't think that cuts it. You have to actually see him in person to be able to see it. But I want to highlight that for the people at home. So even with something like that, right, in your mind, and just you can really think deep about this too. What motivates you to want to do
Well, for this particular example, it's actually very, very simple. A couple of years ago, I've always worked out consistently, but starting probably at the beginning of the pandemic, or maybe a month or two into the pandemic when it hit America in January of, I believe it was 2020.
Yep.
I just was like, hey, I got tons of time on my hands. I'm just working. Church is closed, so I can't go there physically. So what am I gonna do with all my time? Like I got to be productive in some sort of a way. So what's something that I enjoy to do that's feasible and also will help me use my time so that I'm not bored and just aimlessly use it on like movies or media or things like that. So I'm like working out, perfect. And so I just got into a regular routine every day, or I should say specifically 6 to 7 days a week. But because I have so much energy, I have a high level of energy ever since I was a kid. The regular regime that I had throughout the week just wasn't cutting it. So I'm like, well, what else could I do? I got to increase it a little bit more because I still have tons of energy, even though at the time I was an Amazon driver, driving around all day, running up, running down stairs to somewhere, back to the truck, blah, blah, blah. I was still working out every day. So I still had tons of energy after all that. So I'm like, okay, I got to figure out more. So I just started doing push-ups. Even though I was doing push-ups in some of my workout routines throughout the week, I was just like, you know what, whatever. I'll just start doing push-ups every day. So then I did, and I started with doing like a couple hundred a day, 200-300 a day, and then I'm like, this is too easy. And I just started doing more and started adding to it and adding to it. So on top of my regular workout regime, I got to the point where I was doing 1,000 push-ups every day. I cut back a little bit because I didn't want to overload my arms on my upper body day. So when I was working my arms, chest, shoulders, whatever, I'm like, I won't do push-ups on those days, but every other day I will. Then it got to the point where someone was like, could you do more than 1,000 in a day? And I'm like, I don't know. So then I figured it out, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can do more than 1,000 in a day. And then I did 1,500 in a day, and I did 2,000 in a day, and then I did 3,000 in a day, and I'm like, it's too easy, man. Uh, so I was like, all right, what's the world record for the most push-ups in a day? And it's something insane, like over 37,000. And I'm like, okay, hold on, back it up. Let me look for a goal that's actually achievable for my level. So then I looked up how many push-ups, the world record for the most push-ups in 1 hour, which currently stands at 3,206. And my personal best is 2,370. So I am 826, I believe. 826 push-ups shy of the world beating or matching the world record. But what is it that motivates me to do it? Back to the original question. The thing that motivates me to do it is not so much the motivation. The the reason why I want to do it is still there. However, motivation could be fleeting. So I don't primarily base achieving the goal on motivation. For me, in my mind, I have the goal. I know why I want to reach the goal. But what keeps me going towards the goal is discipline and consistency. And I think that's probably much more important than motivation, because motivation could, in a way, be tied to your emotions. And we all know that emotions could go this way and that way within a single day. So I don't base it off of how I feel mentally or emotionally. I just tell myself mentally, hey, remember when you said that you are going to win, or you are going to achieve this world record, and when you achieve this world record, you're going to offer this as giving glory to God. Like, God, look, I became the best in the world, and I didn't do it for myself, but I did it for you. So that's why I want to achieve the goal. And while keeping that in my mind, I'm like, okay, it's going to be hard, and it's hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be strenuous, but you made up your mind to do it. You said that this is what you're going to do. Be a man of your word. Keep it. Keep what you said to God and reach the goal. Even if it takes a year or 2 years to do it, or 3 years to do it, one way or another, I'm going to get the goal. Like, it's not even if. I don't think if. It's when I beat the world record. It might take me a couple of years, but I do not care. I'm going to push myself until I reach the goal. So to answer the question, again, very simply, I don't base it off of motivation. I made a commitment to God that I'm going to achieve this world record so that I could offer it to glorify him. I'm going to do it to glorify him, not for myself. Sure, I'll get some, article written about me or whatever if when I beat the world record, but so what? When they interview me, I'm going to be like, yeah, I did it for God. So yeah, in my mind, it's just, I said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it for God.
So actually, you reached like a really critical point, I think, at the end, because what I was mainly asking by what is the motivation is exactly what you answered in that second half. So it's not really about like what the motivation is, but what is the why behind it? Like, why do that? So this is, I guess, the same question that I asked for Martin too. I mean, I know Martin personally, but one of the things you mentioned in your introduction is that you are soon going to be a doctor of physical therapy, right? So in that, right, for both of you guys, what is the why? And makes me, you like kind of mentioned it. You talked about being a man of your word, about reaching the goal and doing it for God. I think those are common things we talk about in Providence too. So in that, I think that's really good. I really want to touch into the psychology behind it. What is what does fulfilling the goal actually entail, right? Because as you mentioned, the motivation isn't really important, right? Whatever motivated you to begin with, it's fleeting. So I don't know. I'll let Martin and you run with that question. Right? What is the why behind why you do that or anything for that matter?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, because as soon as you were talking about that, I thought, okay, PT school, here we go. That's it's a journey. I'll start off by saying this. Usually at certain schools require interviews to get into, and sometimes, actually not sometimes, all the time, they will ask, why do you want to get into PT school? And the common answer, to, I wouldn't say avoid, but to elaborate more on, is, oh, I want to help people. Okay, you and every other applicant ever wants to help people and have them feel better. Okay, but you need to elaborate more on that. So when I answered my question at the time, I said that I had an ACL surgery and my therapist was helping me, but I felt the way he was helping me was dry. And very dry, I guess you could say, now that I look back at it, a very cookie cutter approach by the book. And keep in mind, I was 17, and I thought 2 months at post surgery, I was like, oh, I want to go back to playing soccer. I want to go back to playing volleyball. But if usually takes 9 months to a year, but keep in mind I was in high school, and all of us were not our best in high school. and we thought we knew everything, we could run the world. And so one day my therapist wasn't there. And then I showed up, the front desk lady said, "Oh, there's a different therapist here. Would you like to see him instead?" Like, yeah, sure, why not? I see him, I'm telling, and then he reads the notes like, "Okay, so you're doing this right now." I was like, "Yeah, I feel like I could go back into sports." Like, "Really? You're only 2 months out?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I could do it." Like, "Okay, follow me to the gym." So I follow him to the gym, and he was pushing me to certain levels that my other therapist didn't push me before. And that really got to me. And afterwards, he asked me, "Do you think you can go back to playing soccer? Do you think you can go back to getting back to your high school season of volleyball?" And I looked at him like, "No, I'm not ready." I felt scared that I was going to hurt myself. It's like, okay, good. I wanted you to feel that way. So when I got asked that question, I pretty much said that I I wanted to be like the therapist who I saw last and treated and really pushed me to my limits rather than a cookie cutter approach therapist, because having that cookie cutter approach will not work with everybody. And that I mean, not just for treatment, but I guess having a cookie cutter introduction to everybody just won't work with just people and people interactions in general. So that was my why when I answered for PT school at the time. Now that I am in, school, I have a deeper meaning behind my why. Why because I'll say that I'm blessed to have this opportunity. My parents, they came from, Peru, developing country, and they always said like, "Oh, we want you to like make the most opportunity that you have here, because this is like, they moved out here for, I guess you could say, the American dream, and it's just much better here in America than in Peru. Just overall, I won't go into detail why, just overall it is. And so I thought to myself, like, okay, well, would be something that I could make, like I could make my parents, feel proud of me, but also something that I love doing. And I thought, okay, I like human movement, I like sports, and I also want to help people. Physical therapy, cool. So that adds on to my why as well. And just knowing that, I guess the rewarding feeling as well, know that from helping a patient, how seeing that they are healing, that you help them in the healing process. And this could be in different types of settings, acute inpatient hospital, private practice outpatient, or orthopedics, like in any setting, knowing that you're there to help them progress, even if it's just a little bit, that's also why that's also what motivates me behind my why behind physical therapy. I enjoy the rewarding feeling knowing that I did something, I made an impact on their lives. So I guess that's what motivates me specifically for physical therapy. Why and how come I'm still in this program and suffering, just well, not suffering as much now, but
That
yeah, how
actually,
come I stuck through it to the end? Sorry, go ahead.
no, so you mentioned a good thing. So you said this is specifically for physical therapy too, and for actually all of us. So I guess the next question is for something maybe that relates to everyone too. How does that why extend to like all the other things? Like let's say even for spiritual things, like the things that we do for faith and for our missions and stuff. So that's like one question that we can think about, and also extrapolating based on these more personal examples and these kind of case studies for guys in general, for guys in large, like trying to get into like the psychology of guys, like where does the why come from? Maybe you can
Mm.
start with the mission part or the spiritual aspect of it too.
Hmm. Where does the why come from? Okay, see, that's where I will admit I I I don't have an answer for that, mainly because it's maybe because of my personality. I'm someone who's very impulsive and will do things spontaneously. But people will say like, hey, do you want to go to the beach? And I'll pack my things already. It's like I'll spend my time in the ocean all day. Like, I don't care how cold it is right now. I don't got a wetsuit. Cool. I don't got a towel. Not smart, but I'll still do it anyway. So I guess the psychology behind the why, that would, for me, that's tough for me to answer. Even for, I guess, smaller scale motivational things, because people will always ask me, they're like, oh, Martin, like, because during my day, if I'm not at clinic, I'm working out. If I'm not working out, I'm rock climbing. If I'm not rock climbing, there's salsa bachata dancing. If I'm not salsa bachata dancing, then I'm playing soccer. If I'm not playing soccer, I'm surfing. I'm always doing something on the move. And they tell me like, what motivates you to do that? I was like, I honestly, I can't explain it. They're just simple things that I enjoy doing. And because I enjoy them, that's what motivates me to do them. So that's the psychology for me, I guess. If it's simple and I enjoy it, then I'll do it. I don't know what about you, Mason?
The why for why I do what I do.
Pretty
Um,
much.
See, this is the thing too, right? So sometimes it's kind of hard to reflect on yourself, but then in these kind of questions, you can also think about like the other people that you've seen, that you think about, like when you observe them, why does it look like they do what they do?
you, you know, if I could be honest just about myself, I think the reason, so for me, for that particular example that I explained before, of wanting to set a world record, that's just one thing that I'm doing. There's other things that I've done, other hobbies that I've had. Like I was a mixed martial arts fighter. I never actually done any fights because I didn't like it. Because I knew that I would just jack people up. Because my coaches, okay, I'm not trying to brag about myself, but I'm just gonna say what my coaches said about me. They nicknamed me the prodigy.
Oh, wow.
So I had skills to pay the bills, but I did not like fighting people. Um, I found it very arbitrary. Like, oh, I'm gonna go in this cage, I'm gonna rip this guy apart, and they're gonna put a tally somewhere on some, you know, basically imaginary record that, oh, I have one win, blah blah blah, how many losses, how many ties, draws, whatever. I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to fight to be able to fight so that I could protect myself because I got bullied a lot as a kid. Um, but for the push-up thing, why I set the bar so high is because I want to prove not to other people, but to myself that I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I want to prove to myself that I'm the best. That there's nothing that could stop me from doing the thing that I want to do, even if it means going through all sorts of difficulties to get there. If I want to prove to myself that I really am the best that I could possibly be, that means I'm going to be the best in the world at doing that thing. So if I want to be the best at push-ups, I want to I don't care about proving it to anybody else because those that know me, they hardly ever see me do any push-ups. Hardly ever. I do it almost entirely in secret. I go to where a room where no one is or a place where nobody is and I start cranking out my push-ups because I don't care about what other people think or what other people are like, oh, that's a lot, or his form's not good, or blah 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 blah. I don't care what you think. What matters is I want to prove it to myself that I could do it because growing up I had a lot of self-doubt, like you can't do it. So it's not only a matter of I want to do it for God, but I also want to do it for myself to prove to myself like no, you are good enough. You're able to do that thing that a lot of other people will be like, why are you even doing that? Why are you even why are you using your time on that? Or why are you wasting your time on that? And other people might not get it. Other people are like, why are you eating onions like apples? It's like it's just what I do. So yeah, yeah. The reason why is so that I could build my self-confidence, prove to myself like I'm being the best that I could be, essentially.
You want to be the very best that no one ever was?
Precisely.
Hmm. Okay. No, thanks for sharing. But so let's like kind of look at it like even within the church too. I kind of want to see what the differences are like between like even guys and girls, for instance, too, right? At your guys' church too. You guys both go to the LA church as well, so we'll try not to name drop anyone, right, or to make it look like we're talking about someone in
Oh.
particular. But like, can you notice the way things are done? Let's say we could talk about something very specific, right? What's something specific for you guys?
Oh,
You
I already
notice
know.
where you
Sorry.
notice there's a difference between how girls do things and how guys.
Oh,
Oh,
I sorry.
oh,
I thought you
okay.
were gonna say something about motivation, like for church specific tasks.
Well,
So
that's
this,
What's my
that too.
motivation?
Yeah, that's all part of it, right? But like, so when you notice something different, so I'm trying to see, how come, you know, we of course we can't generalize too much, but how come girls tend to do things this way, and how come guys tend to do things this other way when it comes to the same things?
okay. Okay, this one is gonna apply more for, I guess, both guys and girls. And I'm just gonna say this right now. This situation that happened, like it's all cleared up. I don't mind sharing about it, and I don't think the other people that may potentially hear this will mind hear me sharing about this as well. So, and when I'm doing praise, everybody in the praise knows that I am never satisfied with the songs because I always want to make sure it's like, no, it has to sound like really good. It always has to sound like just very top tier. At first when we started off back in July, August, it was more the mindset of, okay, we just got to play a couple songs to get by. And then towards the end of the year of 2022, we're like, hey, let's play 4 songs. And then we just normally start to play 4 songs. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of songs. I'm okay, we're keeping up somehow. But then it got for me, it started to get to a point where it's like, all right, now we're playing 4 songs, but I don't want to play 4 songs just to get by. I want to play these praise songs on Sunday to make sure it sounds good. Like that it doesn't sound like we're just getting by. And there was one day we had to play 7 songs, but we didn't even start at our normal time. We started later. And there were two, I'd say out of the 7 songs we played, 4 of them we'd never played before. And I thought, okay, like how I practice, I don't have a drum set. I go to church and I practice on my own. And I have to make sure that I'm doing it well because I have a metronome going in my head. And for any song, drums lead the song. They set the tempo, they set the rhythm. So whatever pace that I'm going at, everybody else is going at. Everybody. So I was told that my first day of drums, and that pretty much made me a leader. I'm like, okay, well, great. Thanks for the pressure for first day on the drums. No pressure now, no previous experience before playing today, first day of service. But anyways, I fast forward um to that day, and we started late, and there were 5 songs. And it's like we played it well the first time through, but I didn't like it. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't like this right now. I really don't like this. And I asked at the very end, hey, can we play these 3 songs at least one more time? And they told me like, oh, we don't have time to practice. And I looked at them like, guys, we could have practiced earlier. And on top of that, people showed up late. And here I am, busting my butt off trying to make it sound good, but then we get this. Like, I don't feel like that's fair. And somebody else said, well, we'll be fine. We'll just get by. And I guess I could say this was a a woman in this who said this. It's like, oh, we'll just get by. And me, I was like, no, I don't want to get by. That's not right. Like, I don't like, why are we still in this mindset of just getting by? That doesn't flow with me. Like, do you think God just wants us to get by right now? No, that's not what I'm here for. So in terms of I guess I wouldn't say in terms of how it did go specifically for different how guys and girls think, but I think more, like I said, again, more specific to that scenario where it was my thinking, how I thought about praise and how to approach it versus how she thought how to approach it, as well as most of the other praise members at that time. Since then, we had a meeting about it, everything was talked about and discussed, there was great communication, and things are a lot better. So I guess that's my say on that in terms of how we think and based on motivation how things are run.
So I guess that brings up the question because you mentioned you had that meeting, right? And so you kind of discussed why that happened, right? So if you could highlight the difference, what do you think the why was? How come they handled it that way versus? I mean, you already explained how you thought, but what did they say? Like, what was their reasoning behind?
I guess and keep in mind it wasn't just her. I feel like it was just in general the rest of praise team at that time. They were explaining is like, like we just wanted to we were just doing it just because, not necessarily thinking about raising the level at the time because everyone was just comfortable with how things were going. Sometimes let's say, you're doing a job, oh, at first your job is pushing you, and then you just get comfortable with it. And you're not really getting pushed, there's really nothing else to learn, and you're just comfortable. You don't really want to do anything else to go above and beyond. So that's the best way I could say for that from their point of view, is that they just got comfortable and they didn't really thinking about pushing beyond, like, oh, what else we can do. Because at that meeting, there was a lot of things that were brought up to what we can improve. Mainly I brought up I'd say 95% of the points that what we can improve on. But then there were also other ideas from other members and the head leaders as well. As like, hey, what if we want to get the SS involved? Hey, what if we have praise nights as an evangelism event? And I thought those were great ideas. I had no problem with that at all. But in order to get there, we as a praise team need to raise our level spiritually and physically to get to that point. And so that's when I was saying, like, okay, guys, I know, like, we need to go above and beyond. We can't stay at this comfort zone overall in general. Okay, like, I know I'm motivated to do it, and I can only do this so much, but I need your guys' help as well. So um yeah, that's like I said, the meeting went very well. I was happy with it at the very end, and I'm pretty sure all of us were happy that we specifically communicated on how we were feeling and why we were feeling certain ways, why we were feeling the way we did while during praise practice.
That was good. The, what about you for Mason? 'Cause we don't want to air out too much of LA's laundry, but but whatever you have in mind, like with respect to the church too. One of the things you did mention is that you might be relocating to Georgia, right? In a few months' time.
Right.
What do you? Oh yeah, go ahead.
It's a hard question to answer because honestly, I don't really do much with any of the female members. However, it will be a very interesting change of dynamic and atmosphere because I'm going to a church where there's quite a bit of guys. So there's no shortage for people to hang out with for me. It's not that I avoid the female members, it's just that, I keep a barrier, a healthy barrier. Um, and when I go to Georgia, I know that the like 98% of the church members are girls or women. Pastor Sharon is the head leader, and the only two guys that are there are literally two guys. It's just two guys. So it's going to be a very, very different dynamic, because the atmosphere is going to be different. The way that things are run are going to be different because it's done by female members. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're in those positions because they've proven themselves, and that's just how it is over there. So it's just going to be different, and I have to figure out how to assimilate to that atmosphere and to that church. The guys will be much more close knit because it's only gonna be three of us. So that's going to be very interesting. But I think that will also prove to be an opportunity for significant growth and bonding between the guys that are there, and it'll help potentially motivate us to start looking for more guys to evangelize, though that can be difficult because we're all career. We're all either blessed or potentially soon to be in the next one. So it's going to be quite difficult to evangelize more guys over there, I guess. But yeah, it's just a hard question for me to answer because I don't really pay attention too much to how the girls do things at church. I know that they do well because there's a lot of them, so they must be doing something good. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough question for me personally. I'm not really sure how to respond.
But actually, so you brought up a good thing, and I think this can be like our next big topic. We kind of talked about it in our chat room a little bit, but
yes, bring it on.
I don't want to use this word, but you know, for the sake of just ease of understanding, like the relationship between male member and female members in the church too, and just like even by extension, like our interaction with the opposite sex in the world too, right? Like, and I want to preface this by kind of sharing some of the things that I've talked about recently with certain members, also without going into too much detail too. One of the things that came to mind for me, because I'm second gen and I'm 26 now, so the last 26 years in Providence, I've grown up from the time when I was before elementary school, like through all the way through high school and then college and so forth, right? So you experience a great many deal of things, and the thing that I really see at the end, if when done properly, actually Providence teaches us how we can best interact with the opposite sex, even in the world as well, right? Like it's kind of like a mutual level of respect, but you have to give each other some distance as well. But it has to be natural too, right? You can't like just kind of like avoid each other when they're there, and like you have to be able to work together as well, right? So it's a delicate balance, and I do want to say a huge caveat that I think it needs to be said, and everyone needs to know too. Many people have broken that balance, and they made mistakes with regards to that balance as well, right? So I acknowledge that's there, but one thing that I learned, like growing up in Providence, is that if done properly, this actually teaches us the best way of how to balance out this relationship. Because, like you mentioned, Mason, there's a lot more guys in LA, but I've worked at a lot of like smaller churches, just as you will experience when you're in Georgia as well, where there's like literally maybe like one or two guys. It'll be like me and one other guy, or something like that, right? And so, or there's a huge age gap between, like you also mentioned, between let's say Blessed Family or Milky Way, and then the guys like within our age group, like within our 20s, right? Like it'll be me and then like Blessed Family, or me and then Milky Way, or something like that. So I've definitely worked with a lot of women, and there were times when the relationship was natural, and at times when it wasn't really done naturally too. But I wanted to take the time to kind of emphasize this because, Mason, you mentioned the blessing, and I think the blessing has been a topic of interest to a lot of people lately. There's been kind of a lot of new direction in Providence as well. And actually, one of the things that I spoke to with certain leaders about is, and I don't think that this is endemic just to Providence too. This is out in the world as well. People don't know how to engage in these kind of relationships, right? Even within Providence too, like, people will get blessed, but actually many times it's not really, it doesn't really work out easily. Right? There's a lot of issues and conflicts, right? And in the world as well, I think we're living in a generation right now where there's a lot of like broken relationships are quite common. And I think just the way that guys and girls operate are kind of off too. And so that's like kind of where my mind is coming from. But I wanted to ask you guys, and I kind of want to engage all the audience in this question too. This is kind of like a heavy hitter question, right? Like what's I don't know. You can kind of delve into this however you please. I'll ask another question if the question if it kind of goes in a weird direction, but I don't know. Martin looks like he's excited. So.
Yep.
Yes, I am.
Let Martin take a crack.
Oh my gosh. As soon as you asked this question, I was like, okay, let's freaking go. Okay, so
super nervous as to what he's gonna say, but okay.
I'm if anything has to be, edited out, I totally understand. Nah, but okay, but for real though, with me, I guess I'll start off saying it in general. My my thought process behind it is, it's like, you know what, regardless of your your gender, your your race, ethnicity, political background, whatever, it's like I treat everybody equally. That was my thinking before, but now it's more evolved. I guess I could say it's evolved to treat people treat certain people the way you want to be treated. Because if I treat, I mean, because then people have told me before, it's like, oh, well, I mean, do you interact with your mom, like with how you interact with your friend, how you interact with your professor, how you interact with your dog? I'm like, okay, all right, I'm just gonna treat people the way I want to be treated. Like, if I'm not, I want you to be nice to me, so I will treat you nicely. That's just my general approach. And in terms of interacting, I should say this, I'll divide into two things: interacting with the opposite gender outside of Providence and in Providence. I feel that there's a big difference there. Outside of Providence, I would say in the last 3 years, it was through my program in PT school. And keep in mind, we are supposedly human body specialists and experts. So there was times in various labs that we had to be half naked in front of each other. And it's like, well, if you're not comfortable with that, then you shouldn't be in this program. So with me, I'm totally comfortable looking at the human body, whether it's a male body or a human body. And like, keep in mind, like I said, we were half naked. We not at a single point we were fully naked. Just for as a disclosure, if we were fully naked, I would be very concerned. But I digress. So yeah, and because we had to look at certain anatomical parts, and we just had to see like, okay, how does the joint move? What muscles are going through there? Any particular blood vessels or nerves we should be aware of as well. Like, we had to do that for lab. And my living situation for during those the first this the second year and half of the third year of PT school, I have four different roommates. We all live in a house. Three of them are girls. One of them is a guy, and there's four bedrooms. So me, I have my own room. Two girls have their own rooms, and then a guy and a girl they have their own room, but they're engaged. So it's like, okay, they got the master bedroom. So it worked out fine. And we we all know how to live with each other. We all know each other's boundaries and whatnot. I I we say like, okay, are you gonna clean this? Yeah, I'm gonna go clean this. Oh, okay, cool. It's like, oh, are you gonna go shower right now? I was like, yeah, I'm gonna shower right now. I was like, okay, I'll wait for you. Oh, who's doing laundry? Can you take out your laundry from here? Like, we just knew like how to just have that, set those boundaries with each other, as well as communicate with each other so that we could all, have an ideal living situation. And I'm thankful I'm in that living situation, because of those four roommates, three of them are my program, and we all study together. And if it wasn't for them, I probably would not be where I am right now, about to graduate. So I honestly feel blessed that I was put in that situation with them. Like that we all lived together and we studied together and we all laughed together. We all cried and suffered through our program together. Like we just created a lot of memories. And we all like we don't see each other like, more than a friend or anything like that. We're just like, no, like we're just people who were just there for each other at that time. So in terms of outside of Providence, I feel it's for me, it's just more, it's easier to interact because with the opposite sex, because I just treat them nicely, they treat me nicely. I'm like, okay, cool, that's it. Like, and that we'll keep it at that. Now in Providence, I feel that's different because there are different educations that are given for men and women. And there might have been times where it's like I might be treating someone from the opposite sex nicely, but they might take that the wrong way. I'm like, no, I'm not. I was like, no, like come on now. I've been here for 17 years. I think I know better by now at this point. I know what like I have a steady head. It's at least I'm pretty sure I do. So that's why I'm just like, there's nothing behind that. I just want you to treat me nicely as well. That's it. And it can lead to misunderstandings or just mainly, yeah, misunderstandings where they either sometimes they might look at me differently or they'll just kind of ignore me. I'm like, I didn't say anything wrong. I just just treating people just nicely. That's it. And so, but it's not like that for all scenarios. For me, I think it's gotten slightly better. And I'm only saying that because for one of the members for church who plays in our in the band, she takes I don't know, she takes the metro and the bus. And then she says, "Oh, yeah, I have this bus stop over here, but then if I take another bus, it's going to take me 30 minutes to get to praise practice." And I told her, I was like, "You know what? Let me just pick you up. Okay. I'm going to pick you up from that bus stop because I want you to get here sooner so we can start praise practice on time because we need to start praise practice on time." So when I pick her up, my motive isn't like, hey, I during these 8 minutes, we are gonna talk, we're gonna get to know each other, and we're just gonna go off and live off our best life after. It's like, no, my intentions are I'm picking you up. We gotta get to praise practice. What's been new with you this week? That's it. That's really all there is in that short time. And then once we get to praise practice, it's like, all right, we're getting to practice. Because like I said earlier, when I'm focused on something for praise and I want to do it well, I stick my mind to it. So I guess that's my intake on that.
I'm kind of wondering if Mason has a different perspective
Oh, he
or
does. Yes,
okay.
I don't think a lot of people have the same perspective I do, to be honest.
But thank you for sharing because it opens the door to a lot of different, you know, conversations that we can have. And even in the comment section for those who are listening too, we do want to kind of get into this to understand this because actually the core motivation for me to ask this question is to prevent issues that have happened in the past, right? There's like so many different kinds of issues too, but I want to see if we can navigate through those more effectively. So, anyways, feel free, Mason.
Yeah, I mean, my take is slightly different. I know that Martin could conduct himself appropriately because he's been in his program and he's asexual. So just kidding.
We can tell that from the shaved head.
I know this is coming, so I had that one in the chamber ready to go. I took my shot. I aimed. I fired. Okay, all jokes aside, yeah, I know that Martin could conduct himself well when it comes to the opposite gender. However, I don't think that most guys could do that. And I don't mean like 99 point whatever percent of guys, but the majority of guys, because guys are physical, and Sunsonim said it perfectly. And Martin mentioned while he was explaining too, like, oh, he's just saying things. He's just saying what he thinks and what he feels, and sometimes people, specifically girls, might take that the wrong way. And that's because, as Sunsonim said, and I quote, "Women are weak to mood, men are weak to nude." Basically that. It's literally what he said. It's a perfect translation, and it even rhymes in English. So it's like, wow, it makes sense in two languages perfectly. But yeah, girls are weak to the atmosphere. They start to feel some type of way when the atmosphere is right. Guys start to feel some type of way when too much skin is being shown. So the vast majority, right? Other men and other women that are probably more developed and at a higher caliber mentally and spiritually will be able to be like, hey, this doesn't bother me whatsoever, and that's great. That's good for them. However, other lesser human beings might not be as skilled as being so uh nonchalant about the opposite sex. They have to, set boundaries for themselves and be precautionary when they're interacting with the opposite gender. And that's natural, because human beings, God does, the Holy Trinity designed us for the male and the female to come together as one. It's literally built inside our DNA, respectively. So it's hard sometimes to get around those physical or emotional innate attractions that we have to the opposite sex. So I think it's appropriate to have certain boundaries and know your limitations and know what you should and should not do when it comes to the opposite sex, because you don't want to become weak towards a specific individual of the opposite gender. And it can happen. And I'm sure other people could be like, oh yeah, I was in Providence and then I left and fell, or I was in Providence and fell with another member, and so on and so forth. So I think it's very important to have those specific boundaries, know your limitations, and don't put yourself in a situation where you could potentially start to influence somebody else to begin to like you, right? Because at that point, you are responsible, right? If Sunsonim said it too, if someone starts to like you, you're responsible too. You set the atmosphere, you created the conditions, you interacted with the other person, and now they like you. You're just as responsible as they are. So I think it's a fine line whether we are interacting with people of the opposite gender within and without Providence. Of course, without Providence, we could give people a little bit more understanding because they don't live like we live. They don't have, these spiritual goals and pursuits that we have, which is fair. It's understandable. They are not on the same level, or they're not on the same mindset as we are. So we should give them a little leeway. And if they start to cross boundaries that we ourselves as Providence members have set up, we just need to vocalize that and be like, hey, I'm this type of way, so please don't respect my boundaries, right? But with other Providence members, I think it's a little bit more understanding, where we all innately know like these fundamental principles, like, hey, don't get too close, no, know your boundaries, basically. So I think it's just a fine line. Can it be done where a male member and a female member are able to interact and work together without, as we like to say, catch feelings? Sure, it's possible. You just have to, know yourself well, and, be about your business when you're working with other members, and be professional, be cordial. Don't get too open and share your feelings and your thoughts and emotions and all these types of things, because then it could open up the, cracks and chinks in the armor, and you don't want that. So yeah, it's a fine line. Just know your boundaries and limitations, basically.
Okay, sounds good. So I kind of want to touch upon maybe one semi-related topic, and then we can close for today too. But related to that, because I was kind of thinking along the same grain too, because I was talking to some of the other guys about some issues that have happened in the past. I won't specifically mention what they are, but related to this, for me, when I really think about how men and women should interact, like both within Providence, but actually even outside of Providence as well. Um, Mason, you touched upon the idea of boundaries, right? And we were joking with Martin saying like that he's drawing the boundary for himself, like in his mind, right? But you know, that's kind of where I was thinking with it too, because at some point, and I think in some situations, like at some churches, there's kind of a physical boundary, right? It's like literally like pretty much drawn out sometimes, like guys sit on this side, girls sit on that side, sort of thing. And that happens in a lot of churches. But for me, kind of like what Mason mentioned, it first and foremost, it had to be a mental boundary, like a self-prescribed mental boundary. Like you should know your limits, so you should know what you should or should not do, right, for yourself, right? So growing up, that's always the assumption that I was acting on. Like, okay, like I learned the word, I know it, I understand, so I know how I should behave. Sometimes you make mistakes, and that's exactly why, as Mason said, you need to know yourself well. You need to know your limitations, and your limitations sometimes you can be tempted by different things, or you can be troubled by different things. You can be like really shaken by certain things. You have to kind of know that, and that takes a process to figure out too. But through doing that, you have to establish for yourself a boundary that someone else isn't prescribing to you, right? But I think at a certain point, for me, when I was conversing with people, I noticed that in certain places that the externally prescribed boundary was harsher than our self-prescribed boundary. And like the church was telling us, oh, yeah, it was like a very specific boundary. Like if I had to illustrate the example with sitting separately, when we were younger, we sat separately because we knew we should sit separately. Like no one told us you can't sit together. It was like you learned the word, you understood, so you sit separately. Right? So that's a very natural thing, right? Because it comes from yourself, it comes from your own understanding. But at a certain point, it became okay. Guys and girls can't sit separately, but it was like a rule that was established. And in a part, it for me, in a certain way, that's fine. Having a specific rule is fine. But I noticed that certain people were losing the self-prescribed boundary. Right? They were only doing it because of the rule. Right? They didn't have their rule for themselves. For me, that's like when some issues, some of the issues started to happen, right? In the places where it wasn't visible, it would start to kind of unravel and stuff like that. But so, anyways, that's kind of like the reason why I was asking this question. So it's part of what I think. But as kind of a final question that I think I want each of us to answer is, and once again, we're not trying to make this super specific to the LA church, even though 2 out of 3 of us are from LA. But what are some ways that we could kind of like improve, or I guess improve improve the way that we function in Providence between men and women, and then also like even in terms of like in the world too.
Oh, I think for that one, it's gonna be that one's gonna not even be specific for LA Church, but maybe just more AP compared to Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. And the reason why I say that is because um I feel like just more the Asian countries, Eastern countries, I should say, are like they are more strict and rule based with certain things, and not rather than with AP, it could be a bit more lenient on certain things. So for that, here's what I mean by that. So I remember during one of the SS service, the superstar services that were in Korea at the time, uh, the SS, they were sitting, opposite opposite gender, like boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. And I remember one of the leaders who came back and witnessed that, it was to be like, hey, in the real world, you're gonna have to, you know, deal with that. It's not like if you're doing that, sitting just all away from the opposite sex, whether it's like at work or in a school setting or whatever, then you're already setting that awkward boundary for yourself where you need to make it more natural. So that was the idea behind it at that time. And for I feel like for AP churches, it would be like, oh, or even maybe even Western countries, like Western nations, like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, we could do that. Like it's it'll be just more eased and relaxed. While with the Eastern nations, they're gonna be like, what? No, what is this? We've been following this way for a long time. Why is it changing like this all of a sudden? Um, so I know I feel like I've gone off topic with the question at hand, but overall, I I don't know if how to I don't know how to bring that up, and mainly because I this may go back to a podcast, that the first podcast that you guys did, but if I were to voice my opinion about something, I don't think it would be heard. Maybe because I'm a guy and majority of the leaders are women, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe it's because I just have a different way of thinking in general and just more comfortable with the opposite sex, because I'm just like, no, like I'm not, I know myself. I set my mental boundaries. I'm not going to do anything. And it's funny that you mentioned about sitting at church, because I remember the leader at LA back then. I asked this leader, I'm like, hey, I always notice the guys sit in a particular section. I'm someone who just likes to sit wherever I want to, where I feel that day. So if I'm the first person at church and I set my stuff in a certain area, can I sit there? And that leader said, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, really? I could sit anywhere. I'm like, yeah. It was like just like two. Yeah, so Mason knows where I'm going with this. So he's like, he said just, and then this leader said just two things. One, wherever the preacher is sitting, don't sit there. And two, don't don't sit on don't sit on someone's lap. I don't care if it's a guy or a girl. Do not sit on their lap. That just looks weird and awkward. I'm like, cool. So I I make, because I'm in praise. I make sure wherever I feel like sitting, I put my stuff. I'm like, that's my spot. No one's taking my spots. I I was here first. That is my spot. Now there are times where, and whoever's sitting next to me, guy or girl, I don't care. I'm like, nope, I'm sitting there. That's my spot right there. And I'm proud of that spot. The times I get mad is when people move my stuff and then they sit there and I'm just like, that's a pet peeve of mine right there. That is my spot. I don't care if you're a guy or a girl. You move my stuff. So yes, once again, I was digressing from the question, so I'm just going to end it right here.
Yeah, Martin's very particular about his spot. Don't touch
Yes.
his spot. Don't take his spot. Don't move his things from his spot, or there will be hell to pay.
I remember running with that the last time I was in LA. But anyways, yeah, before I kind of well, one thing just really quickly to Martin, you mentioned something, and I think this is very critical of like just the world, like Providence in general too. But you said sometimes your opinion isn't heard, and that's understandable. But I'm glad that you take the time out to express your opinions too, because one of the things actually, it's not that everyone is going to agree with your opinion, but I still think that it needs to be expressed because we need to have that dialogue and that conversation to progress forward, right? So, like, I'm sure even within the three of us, we might disagree on certain topics, right? But please continue to share, even if so, but also please continue to keep that open ear, right? So that we can learn from each other as well. But with that, Mason, did you have anything like, you don't have to respond directly to anything Martin said, but even the question was like, how can we improve like these kind of things within Providence, right? But if you do want to respond to what Martin said, feel free as well.
Well, I think actually, Eddie, you kind of mentioned what I was going to say, and it's just keeping that open dialogue, the open conversation. Like, hey, there's this thing that let's say that there's a co-ed event, and the guys want to do a particular kind of thing, but the girls want to do a particular kind of thing. But at the same time, the two have to work out how they're going to coordinate the event together. And this is something that I experienced before as well. And there have been a few good examples. And I believe the last podcast that we did that I was on, I expressed that there was one that was not so pleasant. I didn't enjoy doing it at all. But yeah, I think that really conveying, working together, expressing what it is that you want to do, expressing your idea and where you stand, but also having the ability to compromise, I think is something extremely important. Because in any kind of relationship where you hit a brick wall, one person is saying one thing or one group is saying one thing, and the other party is saying, no, I want to do the opposite or something different. There has to be some sort of give, some sort of leeway where both parties are ending up happy instead of one party forfeiting everything for the sake of the other person or the other party getting what they want. I don't think that that's healthy. I think that when you're having this open dialogue, which is important, where you're conversing openly, speaking what your opinion or your thoughts are or how you feel, and also listening to the other person is important. But when the instance of that happening, there has to be some sort of equal compromise where both parties are walking away satisfied, instead of just one person just throwing their hands up, giving up, and be like, hey, you know what, do whatever you want then. I don't think that that's healthy, and I don't think that that's going to promote healthy relations within the church or within, a relationship that you might have with a family member or with your boss or a coworker or some relation that you might have out in the world. I don't think that it would be healthy. So dialogue, converse, but also be willing to compromise without compromising your values or your opinion or where you stand on a particular situation.
Mason, you make it sound so simple the way you say it, but it
In
it's
practice, yeah,
yes, in practice it's not.
right. In practice, it
So
could be a little bit harder, yeah.
so that touches on something for me that I think is very critical. And it's what you both shared. Martin, that it's not easy, but Mason, that it is what we aspire to do, right? Because actually, in that, like you said compromising, but in like trying to understand each other, like really like, to the fullest that we possibly can, right? I think that's something that is important to do, not just between like the guys and girls within the church, but even between the guys in the church and within the girls in the church too. Because actually, there are even more problems, right? Like between like girls and between guys and actually between each other too. That kind of like corresponds to all different categories too. But the reason why I bring it up, and it's actually what Martin shared too, was that I'm not going to name names, but within Providence currently, there are some people who a lot of people thought were unshakable, right? Everyone knows who I'm referring to, but there were even people who we thought were unshakable who have recently left Providence and left Providence in a very shocking and terrible way, right? But in thinking about that, I was speaking to one of the members, and I think this is really very important for me because I think this is true for everyone. One of the things that Sensing has done time and time again is that he has forgiven until the very end. Right? And he told us that the example that we need to follow and the thing that we need to do is to also to forgive each other until the very end. And exactly like what Martin said, but kind of also tying in what Mason said too, that is incredibly hard to do, right? And actually, the member that I was talking to said that when we look at the person who left, the thing that they couldn't do was they also said that they couldn't forgive, even though they knew that they had to. But like the people who like went against them or did things to them or like said things about them, this person they admitted fully that they couldn't forgive these people. Right? And then when I really thought about that, I thought about myself too, because there were like things that happened, right? And I'm like I hold on to them, right? People, I want to say that I'm a forgiving person, and I think for everyone here and for everyone in Providence too, because of how we raise our personality and develop our character, I think we can forgive most things, right? But then there are things that kind of like cross the line for each person and things that happen to us, right? And no matter how much we want to forgive, those things are so hard to forgive. But I actually kind of really see Mason's point too, right? In order to progress forward, we really do have to like compromise, but also to understand each other. And that really entails like actually forgiving one another, even for like the thing that is like the most difficult to forgive, right? Even for ourselves personally, because I have those things. And so I actually thought about it this morning when I was talking to a different member, and I was like, you know, after that conversation, it really made me realize that I really have to forgive. And the thing that I have to forgive, it comes to mind like whenever I think of this topic, I know what it is because it was so bad for me. Like the thing that this person did, it was so bad for me. It was like so graphic that I can remember every single detail. But then I think in the end, what will define us is if we can actually do that or not. Because when I see Sunseing is someone who has done that. But this person who who has left, who I greatly admire and respected and love too, one of the things that they mentioned was that they couldn't do that. So that was a big difference that I saw between the man of mission of the time period versus other people within the history, right? Whatever that they have done. So I fully agree with that too, and I do think that that is something that will apply between guys in our relationship, between guys and the guys that we run with, and between the girls that run with each other too. And like you said, I think between guys and girls at large, within and without a providence too. But anyways, yeah, that was it for me for that. But did any of you guys have anything before we wrap up?
I'll jump in there if I can. Just to go off the forgiveness thing, I think that that's it's a very it is hard, but it's once it's done, it's very, very rewarding, I would say. Especially with all the difficulty that's going on right now, I'm sure we all have experienced it, especially with the events of this year, with people falling away and saying, turning their backs on the man of mission and whatever it may be. It's it's sad, and I'm sure that there's some people that are like, oh, this person that left so and so, and they start, flapping their gums and just, saying bad things behind that person's back, and that's not my personality really. If I have something to say, I'll either evaluate it and be like, is this something really necessary to say? If not, I'll drop it. I won't even say a thing. I'll never bring it up, or I'll address it. However, back to the point I'm trying to make is that we really should forgive the people that are in some way or another giving the man of mission a hard time, giving the Trinity a hard time, giving Jesus a hard time with the way that they're reacting to all of the things that are happening right now. And yeah, because they're not doing anything to us, like personally. They're doing things to the man of mission. They're doing because of the way that they're responding to the situation. They're not doing it to us. They're doing it to the Trinity. They're doing it to Jesus. They're doing it to the man of mission. So we have no right to be like, hey, this person, shame on you, bad, bad, bad. We should be like, hey, try and understand where the person is coming from and why they responded in the way that they did. But I don't think it's our place to be like, hey, shame on you. We should be welcoming them with open arms because we have not been called to judge. This is in the Bible too. We haven't been called to judge, but we have been called to be the light of the world. We have been called to be that light that shines on top of a hill so that other people could go to heaven, so that we could actually help them go to heaven. We're not taking them to heaven. We're just basically showing them where the door is. So I think we should be really compassionate and really showing God's grace and love to these individuals so that they know it's not just all of the people that are still remaining in Providence that are acting that way, but You know, there are a lot of people that are still within this history that really hold the ideals and thoughts of God very highly and want to exude that kind of attitude, character into the world and back to those people so that they can come back. And from personal experience too, I know that forgiving is a very, 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 very hard thing to do. Just like a very quick story, very quick, very, very short and brief. But yeah, I grew up in an abusive household, and my stepdad abused me a lot. He would hit me a lot, beat me, and wasn't very fun. But after carrying around a grudge from the time I was like 6, 7, 8 years old to the time that I was 20, that's a lot of weight to carry. And for those that are listening that understand what I'm saying because they've lived that situation, you know that that's a big weight to carry. It's easier to just let it go. Just let it go and forgive that person. And that's exactly what I did. God inspired me to forgive, and I forgave. And as soon as I did, literally a weight dropped off me. This is not metaphorical. I mean, a literal weight dropped off my shoulders, and I was lighter. Like I feel like I could jump 20 feet. So we shouldn't be negative towards these people that left. We should be embracing them, showing them God's love, and really just being the shining examples that God has called us to be, because we could be that. We just have to be willing to be that. That's pretty much it.
Oh, Mason, if I could add on to what you say, I may be repeating some of the things that you said in a different way, but um, based on current events that happened and what's different perspectives that I was hearing on the situation at hand, I decided, well, every leader, from past, present, and future, say that, you know what, you're not here in this history for other people. You're here for your relationship with the Trinity and Jesus. And it's like that's I feel like that's something everybody can agree on. And when, these I guess, yeah, I'll call them current events were happening, I told myself, like, you know what? That's it. I'm just gonna put my head down. I mean, if something's bothering me, I'm gonna say something. But other than that, I'm gonna just show up to church, keep doing praise, play a little bit of soccer after service, but that's it. I don't really want to talk to anyone, really. And when I was hearing everybody's perspective, regardless of, I hate to use this word, which side they were on, I I listened to them because whatever they say is, for in my opinion, whatever they say and how they're feeling is valid. And I think that is the healthcare side of me that comes out. Because when a patient comes in, like, just complains to me, my first thought is like, stop complaining. It's more like, why are you complaining? What's making you feel this way? Like, what is also influencing you as well? Are there any other stressors that are going on in your life? Like, that's the main thing that goes to my mind. I just want to understand where they're coming from. And even then, like Mason said, the people who are, decided not to be around anymore, just just have always just be there, forgive them, and have welcoming arms when they come back. Now, on the other hand, there are people who are still around in Providence, and once again, no names will be mentioned. However, the way I've heard these particular people approached these certain things about I guess, so to staying on the side, on quotes, of the man of mission, and their approach to it, like, their intentions were good, but I didn't like how they handled it, because now those people who aren't around anymore they're part of the reason is for those people who are around and approached it in a, I wouldn't say unethical way, just they could have been approached a lot better. And the conversations were, there was probably some type of misunderstanding. And then, you know, the words, other unnecessary words were said. And then it just led to them, you know, maybe not even being friends, or I don't even know, you know, these people who were, you know, brothers and sisters in arms in prayer or praise or fellowship or just, you know, close down. It's like maybe they don't just even talk to each other because of these current events. And for me, that's sad to see from both sides, regardless of who started what or who said what. I don't care about that. Everything needs to be communicated well, and for that to start, as Mason said, there needs to be forgiveness. Like there needs to has absolutely needs to be forgiveness first from both sides, and because I mean that's that's just who we are. We're people that just need to learn how to forgive each other, regardless of how bad situations got, how they get. And yeah, I need to do that for myself as well with people out inside of Providence and outside of Providence as well for particular situations. So yeah, I am gonna get on that soon because it's not easy. So I'm saying soon, no specific time frame.
Well, thank you guys for that too. So actually, it's kind of interesting because I think for everyone listening at home, I think towards the end there were some hot takes a little bit in there too, because there's so many different things going on too. So I definitely agree with you know the majority of what you guys shared too. One of the things I do want to add though, because I've been speaking to some people about this recently, um, when things were initially starting to happen back in March, I think I was kind of like of the same mindset as you guys and as many people too, of like, I think at first a lot of people were hoping it was a ruse. Like a lot of people
Mm.
were hoping it was a ruse, right? So that was something too. And you know, I think that was a fair thing to think. At first, I was like, okay, I'm not going to listen to anyone because everything is just conjecture. I have no idea where this is coming. But now, like the dust is kind of settled in some ways, so some of the details that were previously kind of unclear are a bit more clear. But one of the things after months of reflection that came to mind was actually when the things that happened in March first became public. Someone said to me that this is exactly the same thing that happened in 2007 or 2007, 2008, in 1999. And when they said that at first, it didn't really register with me. I didn't really know what that really meant, right? And I didn't really understand the depth of that. And I don't think that the person who said that to me really meant it in this. But lately, I've been reading the Bible more. And the thing that I realized from the message that came out, I think 2, 3 weeks ago, is that really, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's not about how you just treat God, right? But it is about how you treat the man in mission. And that is the more important thing, right? Because no one treats God harshly. I guess actually that's not true of our generation, but but when people think of God versus like the man in mission of this time period, then typically they treat one way worse than the other. But the reason these last few weeks, the messages have been coming out a lot more clearly, and what that made me really think about was the same thing with the same kind of people happened back in 1999, 2008. And the big significance for me of that was we were hoping that the people nowadays, they were not like Judas, but we're hoping that they're Peter, right? And that's a reference that I've heard many people make. But then at the end of the day, I really realized that it really doesn't matter what anyone else says. So that's what Martin mentioned. But I'm kind of spinning it a different way because I really realized it really doesn't matter what anyone else does. Because even in the example of forgiveness, I've seen what the man of mission has done in terms of forgiveness and the lengths that he will go to forgive. But I've seen people in my last 26 years in Providence, I've seen people were not able to do that. right? And so it doesn't really matter what anyone does. It doesn't matter whether someone, a bad person, did good things or good things. It doesn't matter if good people did bad things, right? That was never been the focus. And so I did want to include that in there because there's so much conversation. And we did mention some takes that might be like hot takes, right? Because I know everyone's situations are quite different. But at the core of it, I did want to highlight this to present one other viewpoint as well with regards to this matter. But today, just to wrap up things for today too, we mentioned a lot of really good things. We started off with this idea of like what motivates guys, or like what's the reason why we do certain things, right? And I think we got into some examples, some case studies from Martin and Mason's personal lives too. But I know everyone else at home has similar stories as well, so I hope that we can share those things too, and kind of extract the lesson from the stories as well. But then I think we went into a really good topic about this kind of, this relationship between, the opposite sex, like within Providence and with that too. So there's a lot of content there. I'm actually really curious to know what the girls would even say to this, and like what different groups and what different age groups, even amongst the guys, would say too, right? So this is the first meeting that we had without Pastor Sky, with just guys in their 20s. But I know each group will be different. So I'm really keen on hearing, because it's all done in the effort to make Providence better, right? As for us, so we're recording this on May 12th. So this week's message is about God's absolute will, right? So we don't want to do things like, we don't want to orchestrate things between guys and girls in any way that just one person would think of, but we want to do it in the way that God and the Trinity would want us to orchestrate Providence, right? So that's the reason why we mentioned all these things, even if you agree or disagree. That was the cause. And so I really hope that everyone has fun listening to this segment. I know we have a lot of enjoyment talking to each other and to engaging with you guys through this segment too. So anyways, that's it for this recording. Thank you guys all so much for listening. And whoever is next in line for this segment, we wish you guys luck on whatever you guys talk to. But anyways, bye guys.
All right, later.
Peace.